Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., and it is so nice to be back with it. A brother was down, all messed up last week with this stupid cold, man. It was sounding all nasally and just stuffed up, and it's good to be back, man. I really enjoy doing this podcast, and it's just good to be back with you. Got a good show coming up for you today. In the lowest row, I'll talk about the Saints and the Rams, my reaction from that game. That was a great game that was overshadowed by an idiotic no call by the NFL referees. The Pats and the Chiefs, man. I didn't really get to see too much of this game, but I wasn't really surprised, and I was really kind of hoping there was a way that both of these teams could lose. But I do have something to say about the overtime reaction, which both these games went into overtime, which is kind of crazy. And I'm in and I'm out. LeBron said he feels he's the GOAT, and he said this a little while back. He said he feels that he's the GOAT because of what the Cavs did to the Golden State Warriors in the 2016 finals. And there was quite a few people that freaked out when he said it. And in What's the Wave with Chef Road Daddy, which has become my favorite segment, I'm going to take a little bit of a right turn with that one today. And I'm going to cook up something on the subject of mental toughness. And this is some knowledge that I cooked up that I've gained from life experiences and some of my own personal struggles. And to be honest with you, if you don't catch any other part of this podcast, I want you to catch this one, because I really hope that this segment might reach and touch somebody out there that may need a little bit of help with the direction that they're going in life. And finally, on the last segment of the podcast, this is some bull jive. Adrien Broner, he made a straight fool of himself after the Manny Pacquiao fight over the weekend, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Well, without further ado, let's get into the low with Ro. This past Sunday was Championship Sunday as the Saints faced off against the Rams in a classic that featured one of the worst no calls in NFL history, and the Chiefs took on the Patriots in a game where Tom Brady did what Tom Brady does. The Saints, they gave up a 13-point lead to fall to the Rams 26-23 in overtime, and the Patriots, they snatched the AFC Championship away from the Chiefs 37-31 in overtime. I'll be honest, the only game I really cared about was the Saints and the Rams. Drew Brees is my guy, and I really like what Sean McVay has done in Los Angeles with the Rams the last two seasons. Now, the Patriots and the Chiefs, man, look, I am sick and tired of seeing the Patriots so doggone deep in the playoffs every doggone year. I have a severe case of Patriots fatigue right now, so I'm going to need the AFC to get its act together and get a squad who can stop these boys from getting so doggone far in the playoffs. Are you listening, Denver Broncos? The Chiefs? Man, look, as a Broncos fan, there's no way I can bring myself to root for the Kansas City Chiefs, despite them being fresh blood to the AFC Championship game. So I was like, bruh, is there a way that both of these squads could lose? I mean, please, football gods. And then John Elway. Ooh, look, I know John Elway is sick. He let Wade Phillips walk after the 2016 season after he put two of the best defenses in Broncos history, in NFL history, on the field in Denver. He let him walk after the 2016 season. The Rams picked him up. He traded Aqib Talib after the 2017 season to the Rams, and then he cut C.J. Anderson. Well, C.J. Anderson has had a whirlwind of a season. The Broncos cut him before the 2018 season due to salary. He goes over to Carolina. He plays in a few games with them. They cut him. He signs with the Oakland Raiders. He was with the Raiders all of 5 days. Didn't play in a single game. They cut him. And now he's with the Los Angeles Rams. All three of these dudes, all former Broncos, and now they're getting ready to play in their second Super Bowl in just the last few years. And they're on the brink of getting another ring. Man, talk about getting your face washed in it. And look, I'm a fan of John Elway. I love what he's done as a GM. He's struggled the last few years, but it happens to everybody. But, Yeah, that's got to sting a little bit. Now, the Rams, they got the W in this game on Sunday on one of the worst no calls in NFL history when Rams cornerback Nickell Robey-Coleman committed a clear pass interference penalty along with a helmet-to-helmet hit on Saints wide receiver Tommy Lee Lewis late in the fourth quarter. Now, on this play, Robey-Coleman, he runs into Lewis, and he's not even looking for the ball. Didn't turn his head around or anything. This was like a clear charge. And basically the way this play looked, it looked like Robey-Coleman knew he was beat. So it was like, man, you know what? This dude has already beat me, so I'm not going to let this dude get this touchdown. I'm going to run into this dude, and I'll just take the pass interference penalty. And they got lucky because I don't know what the refs were looking at. I don't know how they missed that. But the way this play played out, that was a textbook pass interference play, but the ref held the flag. Now, let me be completely clear. That's not the single reason the Saints lost the game. It's the biggest one. But even with this terrible no call, the Saints had plenty of opportunities to win this game outright, but they simply didn't capitalize on them. Sean Payton was understandably upset, but he took the high road in the press conference, which is one thing that I can honestly say that I couldn't have done. The NFL, they would have just had to give me all kinds of fines because I would have let the league and those refs know exactly what was on my mind, cuss words and all. Now, my mama wouldn't have appreciated it, but I would have just had to call and apologize to her. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, this happened with 1:48 left to go in the game. The Saints, they ended up settling for the field goal. The Rams, they tied, going to overtime, and the rest is history. But this bad call aside, the Saints simply blew this game. Now, they were up 13 points early in the game, and the Rams, they cut the lead down to 3 points when the score was 13-10 at the half. At that point, I knew that the momentum was swinging in the Rams' favor because the Rams, they got the ball back after halftime. Now, the beginning of the game looked like this was going to be like the first game between these two squads earlier in the season when the Saints won 45-35. Because the Saints, they were beating the brakes off the Rams in that first game. Then the Rams, they made a strong push in the second half before the Saints finally locked down and got the W. But as this game went on Sunday, Los Angeles started to get more confident. They started taking more risk. The defense started harassing Drew Brees more, and they were reaping the rewards. A perfect instance of this high-risk, high-reward play, that was the fake punt on the Rams' third drive of the game. Now, that play right there possibly saved the game for the Rams because before that, the Saints, they were manhandling these boys before that. Now, Rams punter Johnny Heckler, he executed a perfect fake punt to Sam Shields that went for 12 yards on a 4th and 5 play. Now, those kinds of plays right there, that is vintage Sean McVay and Sean Payton type of coaching because both of these dudes will try and steal possessions from you when they catch you slipping. Both of these dudes are aggressive, go for the throat type of coaches, and that's a big reason why both of these squads are so good. And I've said this before, coaching is everything. But for the Saints, though, man, you know, I was really wanting to see Drew Brees have a shot to get another Super Bowl ring this year. Now, I'm not a Saints fan at all. But now I have a lot of friends who are Saints fan, a lot of friends who are from that area. I got a lot of friends who are Saints fan. And, you know, I'll pull for the Saints if they're in the playoffs and the Broncos are on the couch. And after how the divisional round ended for them last season up there in Minnesota with that freak play between Case Keenum and Stephon Diggs, I wanted to see Drew Brees and the Saints go marching in with the ring. And as much as the refs blew that call, this loss isn't all on them. You know, it's like my coach used to tell us, fellas, don't ever leave the game in the refs' hands. Handle your business, do your job, and everything else will fall in place. Now, the Saints, to be honest, the Saints hadn't been the same squad since that Dallas game. That game right there gave the rest of the league the blueprint on how to beat the New Orleans Saints. You take away Michael Thomas and Drew Brees, he really doesn't have a whole lot to work with in the passing game. This is why the Saints tried to sign Dez Bryant, and when he got injured, tore his Achilles and then went on injured reserve, this is why they went after Brandon Marshall, because they need more help at wide receiver. They need more consistency at the position. Yeah, they got Ted Ginn, and they do some gadget plays with Taysom Hill and things like that. And Ted Ginn, he made some really nice plays for the Saints in the passing game, but they need more consistency at the position. But this officiating, man, you know, the officiating in the NFL is trash. It's straight trash, and it has been for years. It's inconsistent, it's overly done, and it's just not good for the game or the product. Now, maybe the PR nightmare that the NFL has on its hands as a result of this blown call will finally make the league address this problem. But after the rules that they put in place this past offseason and the terrible execution and enforcement with that during the season, I'm not even sure the NFL knows how to fix this problem. Now, this was a great game between two great squads that will unfortunately be overshadowed by yet another call by the refs. Come on, NFL, do better. And as for the Pats and the Chiefs game, now I really didn't get to see any of this game until a few minutes into the fourth quarter and all of overtime, but Tom Brady, is anybody really surprised? The Chiefs, they left too much time on the clock for him there at the end, and D Ford, I know D Ford is going to lose sleep over that play for a long time. Bruh, your waist is basically on the line of scrimmage. You're offsides. Come on, man. You know better than that. Now, the Broncos, they have the Raheem Moore 70-yard Hail Mary touchdown against the Ravens in January 2013 as their knucklehead play that helped them take that L. And now the Kansas City Chiefs have the D Ford play. Now, had he been lined up correctly and not been offsides, the Chiefs, they would be going to Super Bowl 53. That penalty right there killed the play that ended in a game-ending interception for Kansas City. But my biggest issue in this game, and this was a really good game between these two squads. This was a great game. There was some crazy calls in this one as well, like that roughing the passer penalty when the Kansas City defender, he slapped Tom Brady's shoulder pad basically, which that was one of the craziest calls I've ever seen. But, I'm not even going to get into all that. My biggest issue in this game was the overtime. The overtime rule that the NFL has needs to be revised. Now, I'm glad they've tweaked it to where it is now, but even with the squad scoring a touchdown, there's no way the opposing team's offense shouldn't be allowed to have the chance to score. Because you can't tell me that America didn't want to see Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense get back on the field with an opportunity to see what they would do with the football. Overtime should not be restricted to the fact that a team captain is blessed and gifted enough to call heads or tails on the coin toss and be right. Now, when the Patriots won the toss, I already knew this game was over. I knew it was over because I already knew the Patriots were going to just drive down the field and get the touchdown, especially considering the fact that Kansas City, their defense, they hadn't touched Tom Brady basically all game. They had 0 sacks. Tom Brady's jersey was just as clean at the end of the game as it was when he was coming into the game. And Kansas City, they just didn't have the pass rush against him to get it done. So when you got that man back there, you already pretty much know that if you give him the opportunity, he's going to strike. And Tom Brady does not go down the field to try and get field goals. He's going down the field to try and score. You can't give him the ball like that and expect him not to score. And trust me, I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I can't stand the Patriots, but I do respect their game. Now, in my opinion, the NFL should do their overtime like college, give both squads a chance to touch the ball and let it play out. If one squad scores a touchdown, give the other team the chance to score. And if they don't, game over. And then on top of that, the league, they already want points on top of points on top of points anyway, so why not increase the chance of getting more points? Now, I know the league is worried about cutting into primetime TV and all that. You got the shows like 60 Minutes and Family Guy and all that. But to really be honest, nobody who's watching these games is worried about those shows. I'm just saying. We want to see a quality game, especially when it's come playoff time. This is for all the marbles. This is, you win or go home. So especially in the playoffs, you want both squads to have equal opportunities to put the game away. We want to see a quality game, bro. Not this bull jive of one team scoring and then the game is over. Nah, man, that's whack. Let both squads touch the ball, and then we can say we have a clear-cut winner. It'll probably never happen, but it definitely should. All right, let's move on to I'm in and I'm out. LeBron James had quite a few people in a tizzy a while back when he said he felt he was the GOAT because of what the Cavs did to the Warriors in the 2016 finals when they came back from a 3-1 deficit to take the title from Golden State. Some people called it disrespectful. Some people reached back to a 2010 interview between Michael Jordan and Michael Wilbon, where MJ basically said he can't consider himself the GOAT because it wouldn't be fair to greats that came before him. Then you had Danny Ainge, who compared LeBron to Donald Trump, which was crazy in and of itself, in the fact that if you say something loud enough and long enough, people will listen. I'm out on this take. Listen, anybody who has an issue with LeBron or any athlete for that matter saying they're the GOAT, get over yourselves. Literally, get over yourself. First of all, what LeBron and the Cavs did that year was astonishing. Period. You can't take that away from him no matter how hard you try. That Golden State Warriors team had the best regular season record of all time, 73-9. They had Bron and the Cavs down 3-1 and every opportunity to finish the job. And I don't want to hear this bull jive about Draymond being suspended for Game 5 because Draymond was there for Game 6 and 7, and he clearly wasn't effective enough to stop the Cavs from taking the dub. Listen, as an athlete, you're supposed to feel like you're the best at what you do, on the field or on the court. You're supposed to feel like you're the alpha. I'm the head Negro in charge, and we taking this dub when I get up in here. Like, folks act like LeBron was being stuck up and conceited. Bron is a humble dude. Okay, cool. But even the most humble of athletes have some ego in them. Peyton Manning, he had a huge ego when he was on the field. America's golden boy Tom Brady has a major ego when he steps on the field. Tim Tebow had a huge ego on the field. Michael Jordan, he had a huge ego on the court. Like, all these cats have a big ego when they step inside their element because that's part of what drives them to be great. Society needs to pick a side. See, we tell these athletes all the time, hey, we want to get inside your head a little more. We want to know more about what you think. We want you to be more authentic. We want you to show us the human side. We want to see the real you. These networks, they put 20 to 30 cameras and an ungodly amount of microphones in every stadium, in every arena, to hear what these men and women are saying in the games. We follow them around in sports documentaries to get a sense of the athletes as humans. We tell them we want the truth, and then when they give it to us, it's, oh my God, how dare he say that? How dare he disrespect Michael Jordan? How dare he disrespect Kareem? Stop it. Make up your mind. Do you want the sting of the truth, or do you want the false sense of the truth that turns out to be a full-on lie? Society, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. And then we wonder why society is so confused. We say we want the truth, but in reality,
you can't handle the truth.
What's the wave with Chef Rodaddy? Now, what's the wave with Chef Rodaddy? In this segment, I generally deal with food and, things that we put inside our bodies. This is relevant because I talk mostly about sports and athletes on this podcast, and part of sports is taking care of your body. Well, today I'm going to kind of switch it up on you a little bit. Now, another part of sports is being mentally tough. I don't talk about that a lot on this podcast. Well, I do, but I don't, because I talk about portion control and discipline and things like that all the time, but I don't really focus on being mentally tough and what it takes to really change things with your body as well as your life. And part of this is being careful about what you feed your mind. So, Chef Rodaddy is going to cook up a little bit of thoughts from my own personal experience, and hopefully this right here will help somebody else out there to do the same. Now, today I'm going to talk about something that society kind of likes to brush under the rug. There's a lot of body positivity and things like that going on, and I think all that is great. But so often we hear people say it's not about what's on the outside and what's on the inside. And while that is true, what's on the inside counts. It's true, but let's not get it twisted. Looks matter. And the reason why this subject came up about a few convos that I've had over the last few weeks with some friends, and it brought me back to some instances that I've dealt with. Now, I've told you all about my past struggles with weight and how I finally got control of this fat demon, and I finally beat this demon and defeated it. Now, even though I'm not quite at my goal, this demon is defeated. But let's keep it moving. But there's another aspect of this issue that we as people, we tend to kind of overlook, especially us men. See, how I ended up even talking about this, because I wasn't going to talk about this. This really kind of just came up. I was actually going to talk about something else in What's the Wave. But how I ended up talking about this, me and some friends, we've had some convos on this subject of women rejecting good men. And while there are some knuckleheads out there who will pass up a good man because she feels like he's a lame, because, he may not have enough money, or he may not drive a certain car, he may not dress a certain way. While there are some that do that, I'm not talking about them. We're talking about reasonable-minded women who have good heads on their shoulders, who who basically just want a great relationship. Now, those kind of women, they ain't passing up no good dude just because he's a great guy. That's just not happening. If she passes up a great man, there's something else about this guy that she just doesn't like. And how do I know? Because I've been there a time or three. So, see, what happens is a lot of time us men, we can't really take the sting of rejection very well. So to avoid the ego being bruised more so than what it already is, we like to tell ourselves and our homeboys, man, she just don't want a good dude. She bull jiving this and that and the other. When the reality is, we don't want to face the fact that there's something else about us that this young lady just ain't feeling. Now, before you kind of just say, oh, man, this sounds like he's being superficial and this and that and the other, that's a very shallow way to look at things and this and that and the other. In a way, I could kind of see where people kind of get that from, but I can talk to you about my experiences with this whole deal. And I'm just talking to you about the physical aspect of things that I've dealt with in the past and everything else. Now, see, what ended up happening is I realized that I was running into the same problem when it came to dating and this and that and the other, because let's just be honest. I mean, the bigger the waistline is, the smaller the dating pool is, and vice versa. The smaller the waistline, the bigger the dating pool. That may not sound good, but the reality is, and sometimes reality just don't taste that good. But I started running into this situation where it's like I'm going after these, I'm pursuing these women and things just aren't working out. And the thing about it is, now I'm not the kind of guy, I'm not chasing after skeezers and women that put out easily and all this other stuff. No, I was going after women who, they had jobs, they were doing their thing, they had really good heads on their shoulders, they were great women, doing their thing out here, traveling, just living their life, not being knuckleheads and everything else, being all fast and whoop-de-whoop-de-woo. I mean, these were actually great women. But the thing is, I kept running into the word no. So I had to look and I had to say, you know what, Ro, this keeps happening to you and you keep getting the same result. You're doing the same thing, you're getting the same results. So at some point I had to realize, Ro, you're the constant in this situation. What is it about you that keeps getting you the same results? And there were some other things going on in life, with jobs and, professional wise and things like that. And it was becoming very apparent that I was going to have to make some significant changes if I was going to get the things out of life that I wanted. And what ended up happening is I had to sit down and I had to have a come to Jesus moment. Like I literally had to sit down and talk with Jesus and say, look, this is going on in my life. This is going on with the job. This is going on with my finances. This is going on here, this and that and the other. I don't really have any solution. And I need your help in getting me to where I want to go. Show me what I'm doing wrong, Jesus, and, we'll take it from there. But for right now, I need you to show me what I'm doing wrong. So Jesus did exactly what I asked him to do. He showed me what I was doing wrong across multiple aspects of my life. But since I'm just talking about this physical aspect, I'll just keep it there. What ended up happening is he brought me back to a conversation that I had with my old college professor, Dr. Lee Browning, and God rest her soul. And this is back in 2005, 2006. She got up in front of the class one day and she gave us this life speech. And she basically told us, if you want to change anything in your life, and I'm paraphrasing because, of course, I don't remember the exact words, but if you want to change anything in your life, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. And if you're out here, we were 22, 23 at the time. And she's saying, a lot of y'all are wanting to date, you want to get married and things like that, and that's fine. But you have to look in the mirror and you have to ask yourself, based on where you're at in your life right now, would you marry you? Would you date you? And when Jesus brought that conversation back to me, that's when it really hit. So I was like, okay, so what I did is I went and got in front of a mirror and I had to be honest with myself. Ro, based on where you're at right now in life, would you date you? From a physical aspect, financial aspect, emotional aspect, whatever it is, where you're at right now, would you date you? And the answer was no. This was about 2 or 3 years ago when this happened. Based on where you're at right now, Ro, would you marry you? And my answer was no. So with my answer being no to both of these questions, I had to put myself in a woman's mindset for just temporarily, because of course I'm a man, it's impossible for me to do that on a long-term basis. But if I can't look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what, if I was a woman, I would date me or I would marry me, if I can't look in the mirror and tell myself that, then how in the world can I expect an actual woman to say yes? And don't get me wrong, trust me, I get it. Looks aren't the only thing, but see, this is what it boils down to. Looks aren't the only thing, but looks are important because physical attraction, it's an important part of chemistry, which is an important part of intimacy. Because intimacy is not strictly physical. It's not just sexual. It's an important part of it, but it's not just that. Intimacy is emotional. It's mental. It's spiritual. It's a connection between these two people that has to be strong. And if there's not strong intimacy or a strong connection on multiple levels between these two people, that relationship is not going to flourish. It's not going to prosper. So this was about me being honest with myself and saying, you know what, Ro, if you don't start making some significant changes, you're not going to get out of life what you truly want out of life, and not just from a dating aspect. And really, when I started making these changes, dating was actually pretty far down on the list. I started making these changes with my body because of health reasons. Like, my health was fine. Thank God I never got sick. I never came down with diabetes or anything like that. I got friends who were younger than me who ended up being diabetic. So thank God I never got struck down with anything like that. But I didn't want to keep going down the same road because it got to be where it was like, okay, you know what, Ro? If you keep going down the same road, you're playing with your health. Because if you keep going down this same road, you're going to put yourself at risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, stroke, heart attack, early death. All these different things I started thinking about, and it's like, bruh, you know what? I'm really not trying to deal with that. And I've seen family and friends that have dealt with diabetes and the complications from it, and I knew from their mistakes that I did not want to go down that road, and I knew I was going to have to make some changes. It also hit me from a spiritual aspect because it's like, okay, you know what? God blessed me with this life. God blessed me with this body. I only get one of each. I only get one life. I only get one body. I need to maximize my quality of life while I'm here. I need to treat my body like it's a temple while I'm here, while I still have the opportunity, while I still have breath in my lungs. And lastly, and from the dating aspect, let's just be honest. As a man, I don't know one man that's going to go and actively pursue a woman that he's not physically attracted to. Now, you do have some knuckleheads out there who, if they really feel like they need a woman for something, like they need a place to stay or a car, or with this time of year, if they need a tax refund, then yeah, you got those exceptions out there. They'll chase women for things like that, but I ain't that kind of man. So it's like, okay, you know what? I'm a man, so I'm not going to pursue a woman that I'm not physically attracted to. I'm not going to chase intimacy or a connection. And when I say intimacy, I ain't talking about just physical. I'm not going to chase down, physical, emotional, spiritual intimacy and a connection with the woman that I'm not physically attracted to. The thrill of the chase is all about getting this woman, but, it's a woman's attractiveness is what draws you to her. It's who she is as a person that's going to determine whether or not you stick around. So I had to be honest with myself, and it's like, okay, you know what? As a man, I'm not going to actively pursue a woman who I'm not physically attracted to. Then how in the world can I expect a woman to be drawn to me and she's not physically attracted to me? And when I finally came to all of these realizations, across different aspects of health and fitness, that's when things really changed for me. Why? Because my mentality changed. And if you want to make significant positive change in your life, it doesn't matter what area it is. I'm telling y'all about my aspect of it from a physical standpoint because this has been a big part of my life the last few years. But you may be dealing with something that has nothing to do with your health and your fitness. You may be fighting a battle of alcoholism. You may be fighting a battle of, drug addiction or food addiction, sex addiction, whatever it is that you're struggling with. If you want to make significant positive change in your life, you must get comfortable with having the most uncomfortable conversation with yourself that you can possibly have. I can honestly say that one of the hardest things I have ever had to do was to look myself in the eye, in the mirror, and say, Ro, you are not where you need to be by a large margin. You are in the worst shape of your life. You look worse than you ever have. You got a lot of change to make. And this is just from a physical aspect. I'm not even talking about the other stuff that I had going on that I had to clean up as well. This was just from a weight aspect that I needed to clean up. I needed to clean up my credit because, boy, my credit Whoo, my credit was my credit was so bad, they wouldn't take my cash. But, that's, we're not going to talk about that. Let me get back to the story. So it was like, once I had this extremely uncomfortable conversation with myself, it actually made it easier for me to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because when you're uncomfortable, change requires discomfort. It just does. Once I started making these changes just from a physical standpoint, it was funny because other little things started happening. Because as I started exercising more and getting back to doing what I used to do, it was like, wow, okay, this is the Rochelle Hamilton Jr. that I remember. This is the guy I remember feeling like years past. This is what I remember feeling like. Where did this dude come from? Where did this big overweight guy come from? I realized that when I was going through all that, when I was eating all this junk food and, living this way that was just unhealthy, I realized that I wasn't even myself. I wasn't thinking like I normally thought. I didn't feel like I normally feel. I felt terrible. I looked even worse. And just all these little changes started happening. And not only from a physical aspect, like my mind, like my mentality changed, my outlook on life changed, my attitude changed, some of my habits changed. I don't procrastinate like I used to. I listen a lot better because, man, in the past, I did not like to listen. I'm more reasonable than I was. I'm more rational than what I was. I'm more patient than I was. Because one thing about trying to lose weight and get back into the health and the fitness game and really getting yourself on track, you must be patient because it does take time. And it was funny. Once I started making these changes just physically, changes started happening in other aspects of my life. And then that's when I realized this is why God says for us to do certain things and not to do certain things, because all this stuff is interconnected. It's just like if you get a migraine, even though the migraine centers on your brain, once you get a migraine, it shuts you down. Now, I've never had a migraine, but I know a lot of people that have, and it shuts them down. If you get a bad head cold, it may be confined, the center of it, to your sinuses, and you have headaches and runny nose and stuffy nose and all that, and you feel like trash. But if you have a bad head cold, it turns into like a sinus infection. It affects your whole body because your whole body, you don't feel 100%. Well, it's the same thing with different aspects in our life. While we may have significant issues and problems in one area, at some point, either directly or indirectly, it's affecting other areas of our life. This is why, and this is when it hit me, that this is why God says for us to guard our eyes, guard our hearts, guard our minds. Be careful what you take in. Be careful what you consume. To be quite honest with you, this is also when another brick hit me, that with these women rejecting me, it was the best thing that could have happened. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is. Because to be quite honest with you, since I'm just opening up on this particular part of the podcast, if these women would have gave me a chance, I would have destroyed it. Period. I would have destroyed it. And I didn't even realize it at the time. But now that I can look back on stuff, I can honestly tell you that if they would have gave me a shot, I would have messed it up. Because back then, I was not mature enough to handle a relationship. I wasn't mature enough to be with a woman back then. But this is the thing. I tended to be very impatient. You can ask my parents. They can tell you. I tended to be irrational, unreasonable. You really couldn't tell me a whole lot. I had to find out things on my own. And generally, if I did disagree with somebody, it was like, okay, I would hear them, but I would only hear to reply. I wouldn't hear to listen because I already felt like I was right. So back then, there's no way I would have been in any shape to deal with the things that come along with being inside a relationship. Now, I felt like I was, but it took God showing me that, Ray, bro, you got to clean up all this other stuff before you can even think about, going down that road. And I say all that to say this, that anytime you want to make significant change in your life, it has to start with your mind because your mind affects the body. The mind leads, the body follows, no matter what it is in your life. Anytime you get hungry, because I talk about food in this particular segment, whenever you get hungry, that's when basically your mind has brain receptors in it that says, hey, I'm hungry, feed me. It takes your mind for you to physically get up, tell your body to get up, walk over to the refrigerator, use your arm and your hand to open the refrigerator, grab what's in it, put it on a plate, put it in the microwave or the oven, warm it up, and then heat it up, and then eat it. Like, that is all controlled by your mind. So for me, I had to change my mindset because it was like, okay, if I don't, I'm going to continue messing up my life from a physical standpoint, financially, emotionally, whatever. And if you're not willing to change, you will ruin a lot of things in your life, relationship-wise, professional-wise, whatever the case is. If you're not willing to get uncomfortable and you're not willing to change and change your mindset, you'll have a hard life in front of you. You're probably saying to yourself, bro, this all sounds good, but I thought this was a sports podcast, bro. It is, but part of sports and being an athlete is getting better every day and being the best version of yourself so you can be the best version of the squad when you take the field or you take the court, whatever. This part of the podcast right here, this is about being the best version of yourself so you can get the best out of life, period. So whatever you're dealing with, it doesn't matter if it's relationship stuff, if it's job stuff, if it's addiction stuff, whatever it is, all it takes is you have to change your mindset and you have to change, how you look at it and how you're going to approach it. Now, for me, I had to link up with Jesus. Like Jesus runs my life. So Jesus is the center of my life. So I had to sit down and I had to ask him to show me which way I needed to go because there was so much mess going on in my life at the time because I made all of them. I can't blame Satan. I can't blame the devil. I can't do what a lot of times what we like to do as kids. Oh, man, the devil made me do it. No, the devil didn't make me do nothing. I made those mistakes. But the thing was, the mess was so big, I had no idea how to even start cleaning it up. And the only way I could start cleaning it up was to just pray and talk to God and ask him, look, I messed up. I need you to forgive me because I messed up. 2, I need your help in fixing this. And as I did that, that's when everything started changing. And the more I did that, the more, and God tells us in his word, seek me and you will find me. So it took me seeking God, and as a result, God seeked me and he helped me. And that's really what it takes. I had to get with him and I had to link up with God. I had to seek God, talk to God, and let him lead me down the path. And since then, and it hadn't been easy. I'll be completely honest with you. It has not been easy. But anytime you're on an assignment to do something from God or God tells you to do something, very, very rarely is it easy. God does not give easy assignments. Let's just be honest. That's another discussion for another day. This is What's the Way with Chef Rodaddy. So I just wanted to drop something a little bit different from a different angle for you. And like I said, man, I hope and I pray that this particular segment, if you don't get anything else from this podcast, I hope and pray somebody out here gets something from this particular segment that will help them say, you know what, I need to make some changes. Let me start and let me do what Ro did. Trust me, it works. And before anybody says it and before anybody takes it wrong, I'm not saying you have to look a certain way to get into a relationship. I'm not saying you have to have six-pack abs, you have to have pecs, and you have to have all these big muscles. I'm not saying any of that. You don't have to have that to get into a relationship. There are women out there who like big men. There are men out there who like big women. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just telling you from my personal standpoint why I made the changes that I made in my life and how it affected me and the positive changes that it has made across multiple aspects of my life. Or my whole point in this particular segment of the podcast is just to get people to realize that if you want things to change, it has to start with you. If getting a woman was just the object of it, I would have had a woman a long time ago. I mean, I was able to get women when I was big. It may not always been the woman that I wanted, but I was able to get a woman. If marriage was the goal, I could have been married years ago. I mean, being married is not the main issue. I mean, if you're going to get into a relationship, you want to get into a relationship with somebody that you connect with on a deep level. You want to get into a marriage that glorifies God. And it's like, wow, thank God that he put this woman in my life. Thank God he blessed me with this woman. So, I mean, if marriage was the main goal, if being with somebody was the main goal, there wouldn't be a single man or a single woman out here without somebody. If that was just the main goal, there would be no such thing as single men and single women. Anybody, you can walk down the street and get a woman. And for women especially, a woman can walk down the street and get a man. You can chunk a rock at somebody's head and get a man. The last thing a woman will ever have to worry about is getting a man. The hard thing for women is when they want quality men. And then the last segment for the Undrafted podcast, this is some bull jive. Adrien Broner and Manny Pacquiao faced off on Saturday night at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Manny Pacquiao defeated Broner in a unanimous decision, and Adrien Broner did not take the decision very well. Adrien Broner needs to stop. He sounds like a straight clown here. Manny Pac beat the brakes off of him. Now, he was body rocking AB with jabs and body shots and all that. AB averaged 8 hits in a round. Manny Pac put out over 70 jabs in the first 3 rounds alone. Now, Broner, he got some rhythm and he fought back in the 4th, but he couldn't stay consistent enough to make a difference. Now, everybody in the hood knows Adrien Broner didn't win this fight, except him. He said the hood knows he won, and the hood said, boy, bye. AB lost this fight. Stop it. He lost this fight. Take that L, regroup, and then push for the rematch. That's the best way to do it. But bumping your gums after you lose a match like that, it ain't gonna do much. I have all the respect in the world for boxers and what they put their bodies through for the sport. But Adrien Broner, he looked and sounded silly with this right here. Adrien Broner, talking that trash after you got rocked, that's that bull jive. Well, that's my time for this episode of the Undrafted Podcast. I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, talents, and the resources to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to tune in. Don't forget, you can follow the Undrafted Podcast on Instagram at the Undrafted Podcast or on Twitter at RoForShowPro. And like I always do, I want to leave you with the Bible verse today. Micah 7:7. Therefore I will look unto the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.